Members, you are most welcome to today's engagement. Am I loud and clear?
Yes.
Yes, please, you are around.
Okay. I want to welcome all of you to this very important discussion today. But before we proceed, I think so far we have one lady, if I'm not mistaken. Sister Agatha will lead us in a word of prayer. I think she's having a network problem. Dr. Oling, lead us in a word of prayer.
Okay, thank you so much. Let us pray. O merciful God, look upon us with eyes of sympathy. Lead us not into temptation, but rather deliver us into justice and help us to ensure that fair, safe, and inclusive employment opportunities are for all. In the name of the Almighty God, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Doc. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are basically looking at another topic, but before I do that, allow me to introduce our panelists or guest speakers. We have Dr. Oling down Kerjew. That name is more French. A panelist at Industrial Court and a labor dispute resolution expert and industrial relations who has actually moved a lot in a number of countries, especially in the Middle East, in trying to arbitrate for our workers, our Ugandans, our African people. You're most welcome, Dr. Oling.
Thank you so much. God bless you.
Amen. Next is Sister Agatha Namirembe. Sister Agatha is the titular chairperson of PSI for Africa and French-speaking countries, and chairperson of UPEU. She's also the vice chairperson of NRM Workers League for Kampala region. She's a champion of welfare, fair wages, and strong labor laws. She's an advocate of workers. Yeah, most welcome, Sister Agatha.
Thank you, Doctor. Good evening, everyone. I hope this time I'm audible enough.
Yeah, very audible, loud and clear.
Thank
you. The other panelist is who has not yet joined. As I see, is Brother Oprong John, but I think I'll introduce him as he joins. So, ladies and gentlemen, today we are basically focusing on promoting decent work and social justice, with a specific emphasis on strengthening the application of labor standards in the evolving world of work. And I think this evolution, we are looking at adopting traditional regulatory frameworks to new worker models, particularly when we look at the gig economy. We are looking at automation. All these are important while addressing persistent challenges such as informality, social protection gaps, and persistent inequalities that are very evident in our workplaces. Of course, specifically, you'll find that this is a law. The focus is basically trying to look at this has been declared, and they're looking at how ambiguous legal status of workers classification, especially most of them, are trying to look at workers as independent contractors as opposed to employees. This, in a way, deprive them of a number of rights, especially social security, fair wages, and a number of aspects. So today, I think, including fairness against unfair dismissal. So this is quite crucial, and we need to look at this and ensure that key aspects come out to address most of these issues, especially gaps in social protection. We are talking of weak enforcement and adjustable gaps, gender inequality, and how vulnerable some people are, skills gaps and lifelong learning, occupational safety and health are some of the core issues. So, without going any further, I'll begin with our first panelist, who is quite conversant with a number of these aspects. Dr. Oling down to take us through this very important topic, and then we shall subsequently move like that. Members can come up with issues, record issues that you want to bring forward into this discussion, so that at least at an appropriate time we shall award you time to come in and rein in. And I think this is important across the labor union. But I don't know, we need to mobilize all workers in unions, in the informal sector, during this discussion. It's going forward. I don't know whether it's the time which is constraining, but I think it's an area of discussion. Since we are all, most of us are consultants, we shall look into this. You can also see a number of colleagues. I think Comrade Mudibasan has joined. I can see Robert and quite a number of them. So you're welcome. So, Doc, take us through. You're welcome.
Thank you so much. You have mentioned a lot of things that in reality we cannot even cover them in 1 hour. I pray that you arrange for another webinar so that we can discuss the problems that workers are facing when they approach the industrial court, which to us is the only workers' avenue through which they can attain justice. That one, I don't think that we can even cover it during this discussion. However, for the sake of time, we are going to talk about today's topic, which is promoting decent work and social justice and strengthening labor standards and what it means. Promoting decent work and social justice means to ensure fair, safe, and inclusive employment opportunities for all. While at the same time, the idea of strengthening labor standards means that we as peoples in position of authorities, and I deliberately use the word peoples because I mean people of different classes, people of different origin, people of different tribes, people from various countries around the world. So we as peoples in position of authorities, as well as our governments and employers or workers, employers who are employing the workers and giving workers job, we must work hard, all of us together, to guarantee that fair, safe, and inclusive employment opportunities are for all and remain as the fundamental rights of all the peoples, and that those rights are made to acclimatize to the contemporary changes and still remain effective amid continuous global changes in workplaces around the world today. But unfortunately, in Africa, we are still far away from attaining such things. Therefore, we need to take a deeper look at both concepts if we are to properly advocate for their integration into policies of our nations. So let me begin with the concept of promoting decent work and social justice. Legally, decent work is a concept developed by the International Labour Organization that incorporates productive employment with fair income, workplace security and social protection, opportunities for personal development, freedom of association and participation, equality of opportunity and treatment for all the genders and groups. The ILO goal is to create a work environment where people can thrive economically and socially. In Uganda, initiatives like the National Annual Labour Convention and Expo have become a very key platform for promoting decent work and social dialogue. But we still have a long way to go. Social justice in this context refers to the equitable distribution of opportunities, rights and resources, and we are waiting to attain that because in Uganda we have not yet reached that point. Because if we attain that, it ensures that marginalized groups such as women, youth, persons with disabilities, and informal workers are not excluded from the benefits of decent work, including legal protections and easy access to justice through the only workers' court that we have in Uganda, which is the Industrial Court of Uganda, which in the beginning, Honorable Abdulhu Byakatonda was talking about. Without proper justice in courts of law, we are not even going to attain what we are discussing today. However, together, promoting decent work and social justice means building inclusive labor markets that reduce poverty, empower workers, and foster sustainable development. Secondly, the concept of strengthening the application of labor standards in the evolving workplace in the world today. As technology and globalization and climate changes reshape the workplace, labor standards must evolve to remain relevant and protective, which includes updating the legal frameworks to cover new forms of employment, example, the gig works, remote jobs, etc., which yet do not fully have been integrated in the system of our workplaces in Uganda, and also in our industrial courts of Uganda. We still do not have fully integrated ICT system. Therefore, the backlog of cases of workers who have been improperly terminated or illegally dismissed are not being tackled efficiently. It also means ensuring enforcement of core labor rights like freedom of association, collective bargaining rights, and protection against discrimination. It also means integrating social protection systems that adapt to informal and non-standard work arrangements. Many cases have come into industrial courts in which some of the people employed do not have proper contracts or never understood the terms of their work, and some of them actually do not have real contracts. So without clarity in courts of law or in workers' court, it becomes injustice that those workers do not attain justice during the processes of their cases in courts of law, yet the industrial court is the only court of jurisdiction to handle such cases. It also means promoting dialogue among governments, employers, and workers to anticipate and respond to emerging challenges that we have today. In Uganda and globally, this means reaffirming commitments to international labor conventions while tailoring them to local realities and future trends, and not forgetting to preserve the industrial court because it is the only workers' referral court in the country. I beseech permission to leave time for others, and until we get another time to proceed, I beg others to give their opinion, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Oling, for that very candid and elaborate submission. I think we shall give members an opportunity to raise concerns and questions within the time that we have. I think let me bring our next panelist, Sister Agatha, to diverge into the details and submission in this matter. You're welcome.
Okay.
Within 10 minutes, I think you'll have done us a submission. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Doctor, and thank you, our previous speaker. I think you've really done a lot of justice to the topic. I want to also add my voice to this agenda of today of decent work and social justice, and how we can strengthen the application of standards in this evolving world of work. First and foremost, I think all of us here are very familiar with the word decent work and what it entails. But I will still say something about it. Decent work is really working with dignity. Working with dignity, where labor rights are respected, there's equal treatment and equal opportunities are given. There's security in the workplace, and also there are opportunities for persons to grow and develop, and also there are freedom of workers to voice their concerns. Basically, what we are here talking about is, first of all, making sure that our terms and conditions of work are really favorable in our workplaces, looking very much on our workers' rights and our security at the workplaces, looking at our safety and health, and also looking at our opportunities as individuals to grow ourselves, develop ourselves, moving from the one level of, maybe if you came in one level of poverty to the next level, but also opportunities also to develop our careers. All this is part of decent work. It also covers things like social protection, where we look at having a safe work environment, access to health care, access to things like pension, social benefits, access to maternity and paternity leaves. All these are covered under decent work. Access to leave, rests, and how we can also be given those opportunities to actually express ourselves as workers. Are we able to get involved in the decision making of the organization? Are we able to have a fair hearing on issues that concern us? Are we allowed to organize ourselves into trade unions? All these aspects fall under our decent work and decent work agenda. We have also things like non-discrimination, still under that. Do we have equal treatment for both male and female? Gender aspects, gender equality looked into. But also to that, we also have a right to a fair income. Do we have fair incomes in our place? So we look at things like minimum wage. Is there a minimum wage in our organizations or in our countries or internationally at large? So all these things are covered under that, under decent work. If we look at decent work, it has some pillars. It has 4 basic pillars. If you look at it closely and looking at what ILO provides under decent work, the first pillar is job creation. So we cannot separate decent work from job creation. That is the first pillar. And if you look critically at the ILO and also the UN, you'll find that decent work is also included under the Sustainable Development Goals. If you look at the Sustainable Development Goal number 8 of the United Nations, it will look at decent work and economic growth. So economic growth cannot happen where there is no job creation. So that's where job creation comes in as a big pillar. So decent work, job creation and economic growth go hand in hand. But for a country to achieve that, it must make sure that the workers are given decent work. So all those issues go hand in hand. The second pillar is about rights at workplace. So this is where we have all that under conditions of work, non-discrimination, minimum wage, that is another. So the third pillar is social protection, which I've explained in details. And the fourth pillar is social dialogue, where we can actually participate in improving our terms and conditions at workplace, asking for more, and where workers are also encouraged to participate and give ideas, developmental ideas to an organization, be listened to, and also be able to defend themselves in case of the decent work and decent work agenda. Now, if you look at issues of our changing, evolving world of work, we find that many forms of work have come into place. Some have been there, some are just emerging, and we need to also make sure that decent work applies to all these changing forms of employment. So decent work should apply to all formal or all informal sectors. Usually people look mostly on the formal sector, and the formal sector is well regulated in most cases. Laws look at that, but the informal sector is always left out. So when we are discussing any issues or standards of we have to critically look at the informal sector, and the informal sector must be included in our discussion of decent work, and laws have to be put in place to make sure that these informal settings, even if someone is being self-employed, there should be some set standards, minimum standards under which they operate. We also have what is emerging as platform workers, gig workers, people who have to work online. These days it's very common. You find that you're working for an organization which is in Japan, it's in South Africa, but you're in Uganda, you're working there. Or sometimes you're not able to be physical at your workplace, but you have to perform work. How are regulated such people? There are very many challenges. When I'm working from home, even how my sitting postures are different, and it can lead to economic stresses, your muscle stretching and the deformities. And also we have seen issues of working for longer hours. When you're in a platform worker, tend to work for longer hours, longer than what is required, the 8 basic hours of work. So all that has to be regulated. How do you regulate such people? How do you regulate the time that I spend working from home? Maybe even the electricity I'm using, the internet and everything. So all those have to come into place. How are these people protected socially and their time not abused? We come to another sector called the care workers, the caregivers. These are people who look after maybe our children at home. If you're a mother and you're talking about taking care of the home, these are also another category of workers that are now a lot of focus is being put on them. How are these people given decent work? Are they getting the fair wages? Do they have time off to rest? Even if it's your wife or husband standing in, does that person have resting workers? So regulations have to be in place. Do they have social protection at all? Look at our domestic workers. Oh, they work hand to mouth. So at the end of the day, they don't have any social protection. If they are aged, there is no pension, there's no maybe social security, social benefits at all. So these are the things that we need to look at. These are emerging works that attention, they have been there, but not much attention has been put there. So these need to be regulated and put into consideration. There are people with disabilities. Recently, I was out of the country, and here in Uganda, where we put people with disabilities, these people are putting determined people. They no longer refer to them as people with disabilities. Yeah, this was in Dubai. I entered one of their forex bureaus, and they are putting, this is a line for determined people, with a picture of someone in a wheelchair. So you can see how these trends are changing. They are no longer called people with disabilities, but determined people. But they also have to be covered. Are they given that they are benefiting from all these aspects of non-discrimination? Because non-discrimination is also one of the aspects of decent work. Are we giving them the basic opportunities that they have? Are there regulations there? What about people who are emergency workers? We saw what happened during COVID. Yeah, we find that even the doctors and the people in our health facilities never benefited from workers' compensation up to today. Some have never even claimed compensation due to death resulting from working during those emergencies. So all these things have to be considered in this changing world of work, and we see how we can effectively ensure that people are working under decent conditions, working under decent workplaces, also working to see that the opportunities are there for everyone. So, Doctor, I think I've exhausted my 10 minutes, so I've gone beyond. Let me stop here also to allow other people to discuss.
Thank you very much for the candid and elaborate discussion. But I think before you leave, as titular chair for Public Service International for Africa and French and English speaking countries, I want us to seek clarity on how international cooperation could be one of the aspects that we can leverage on to ensure that we promote decent work agenda and social justice. What is your take on that? Then too, you mentioned about how work should translate into an income for the workers. That's definitely very right. And of course, we talk of the hard-earned incomes. I think, how do you look at the aspect of social security? Are there gaps? Are we what's lacking? What's that we can do right to ensure that at least social security can be an issue that can help us promote the decent work agenda and strengthen social justice? I seek for your clarity. We seek for your clarity on those two areas, those aspects. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. For the issue of decent work, it has been an agenda for Public Service International for quite a long time, and a lot of aspects have been taking place under those to ensure that there is decent work. Currently, PSI, Public Service International, has been having programs of gender equality. Gender equality, this has been a topic that has attracted a lot of interest, especially in the public service workers. We still have gaps in gender treatment of men and female. A lot of issues are there. And under these topics, we have been looking at issues of violence and harassment, sexual harassment, equal opportunities, especially in leadership opportunities. And also some countries still have the aspect of having female workers being paid less than their male counterparts for the same work done. So those aspects are all on the agenda, have been looked at. And when Public Service International picks an item, it goes on and it makes sure it also goes to the ILO as an agenda. Another aspect that is being looked at these days under Public Service International is the care workers, the caregivers. Some people prefer to call them our maids, our domestic workers, but also the women, our wives who remain at home, take care of the home. Some don't just only remain at home, but they do both work in formal or informal settings, and they still go back home and do more work without rest. So a lot has been put into those aspects, the care workers, but not only those, but we also look at these people who are doing waste management, waste workers, they will clean our environment, they pick rubbish, they do what? Waste disposal. There's also another aspect that public service is looking at. And we are trying as much as possible to lobby for governments to enact laws or bylaws, both laws and bylaws, which will ensure that these people get the decent work. These people are given protectives. That's another aspect. There are also regulations on violence and harassment, not only looking at the aspect of sexual harassment, but also going further even into violence, bullying, issues like domestic violence that inflow into the workplaces were not handled very well. So those are some of the agendas that we are looking at as Public Service International. Then you also talked about income. Yes, you know, one of the agendas of trade unions is to make sure that we lobby for better pay. Enumeration is something that has been an old aspect of the trade unions, but it's still on. So all trade unions are encouraged from time to time to seek for better illumination. And also the aspects of minimum wage has been of a big concern, where we should not ignore it. We know in Uganda we don't have a minimum wage, and it's quite affecting our workers. But out there in factories, the money they are getting, people decide to give as little as possible. When I was doing some research on this topic, I also noted that it's a key aspect of decent work, economy, and growth, because it both affects personal growth, but it also affects the countries where people are attracted to come in and work, bring their factories in some places, but when they bring in their investments and factories, what ends up is, because to encourage them on, the countries allow these workers to be paid very little money. So it's quite a lot of concern that we need to look at. The gaps in social protection. If we look at Uganda as a country, we know that the formal sector, most of the formal sectors have benefited from either pension or NSSF. It's good that recently our NSSF Act was amended to include voluntary contributions, so that our informal sector people can also benefit from that. But if you look at the statistics today, I don't know how many people have really benefited from it or have been attracted to the scheme. If we had someone from NSSF, maybe that person would highlight on that. I know they have been doing some trainings, but I don't know if the buy-in is possible. We need to all protect ourselves from when we retire. When we retire, how are we going to continue when you no longer have a salary? That's where our social protection will help us. So we need to encourage ourselves, we encourage our brothers and sisters, our fellow workers, to at least do something. If it's not under the government forcing us to save under NSSF or pensions, let's try to do it as individuals. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I also want to welcome our comrade, Honorable Muhandiki Andrew was joined. I think you are welcome. This is where we discuss topical issues concerning workers. But before I release, I give an opportunity to colleagues to come in. Let's go on or up with our panelist, Dr. Ling. Dr. Ling, you did mention about issues of social dialogue, and you experience with industrial court. How do you
Yes,
think fostering that social dialogue can actually reduce on the backlog and promote industrial harmony? That's an area we want clarity on that. And then the other one is, I think, adaptive regulatory frameworks reforms are one of the key issues. In your view, do you think the current reforms that we have are sufficient, or there are some gaps that we need to fill? Within 5 minutes, Dr. Ling can highlight on that.
thank you so much. Well, you have raised a lot of issues which I think we have to make a proper webinar to discuss the legality related to the topic or subject that we have discussed today, and also related to the subjects we have discussed in the past, because we are facing a lot of reform challenges in the industrial court. We are also facing a lot of cases that are so complicated that if we are going to talk about reforms in Uganda, although we might think that the reforms are positive at legal level, for example, in the parliament or in the law or in Ladasa or whatever, or the establishment of the industrial court itself to protect the rights that we are talking about. All those reforms, we also thank His Excellency for them, and we thank the parliamentarians for them. But the implementation of the current laws are still facing a lot of problems because the workers themselves do not have ability to even reach courts of law to attain their rights. All the rights that Sister Agatha have talked about. We have not yet even reached a point whereby our court can decide a case based on an established minimum wage regulation, because we do not have it. And I have a friend who was coming from outside to invest in Uganda, coming from Europe. He has a company in Europe and in the West. And the first thing he asked me, what is the minimum wage in Uganda? And I was like, 6,000. And he was like, what do you mean? he said, so somebody can just decide to pay a Ugandan 6,000 and that is it? So you can now see where we have reached. And also, we should actually make laws that faces out the idea of casual labor, because we don't have a system to handle that in our courts of law. We also need strict regulations of employment agency, because such regulations are positive steps that can keep policy signals and help the lawmakers like yourselves to enact proper laws. Like previously, I had asked you regarding putting into the floor of parliament the law to allow the Industrial Court of Uganda to protect the rights of Ugandan externalized workers in the Middle East, because currently the Industrial Court cannot protect the rights of workers in all the things that we have discussed. Apart from that, we also have problem with annual National Labour Convention. We need stronger enforcement mechanisms to be handled by it. We need inclusive strategies for formal and informal workers to be integrated into our salary system. As she mentioned before, we do not have a minimum wage. So you find in villages, I have a small factory to help the rural farmers. The women, they can come, they grind, and then we let them only pay for the price of the electricity we use for grinding their maize. But now, if they are going to be employed, how much are we going to pay them? What are the wages for such people? There are no standard wages. So you find that the amount of money that any institution, be it a factory or farming or whatever, is going to give to the people they are employing does not have a standard, and therefore it cannot help us to develop our own people. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Doc, for that insightful clarification. And I think on the issue of the labor externalization bill, on Wednesday, I followed up with the speaker. But the challenge is that currently it is difficult to realize the quorum in Parliament. And I think he advised that when we finish elections, Parliament will go on up to May. We can actually pursue that and ensure we move, exhaust on the consultations and have it on the floor of Parliament. I think, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we have listened from our panelists, and I think I want to welcome all of you, Honorable Muhandiki Andrew, and Honorable Mudiba. I think this is your time now to have your input and we make resolutions around this. Starting with Moderator Muhandiki.
Thank you so much, Honorable, for the opportunity. Thank you, members, for the very insightful conversations here. I joined a little late, nevertheless, the things, they are very, very interesting conversations. I think my biggest challenge is that we need to work on the perception of government on labor. Labor, like we know it, is a part of the equation, the function of production. It contributes to other factors of production, like capital, like land and other factors, entrepreneurship and all the rest. But the tendency here in practice is that our government seems to protect capital or capital owners, the so-called investors, than they appreciate the importance of labor. And there are perception indicators. One is that you allow the gentleman that I followed talked about the minimum wage. The failure by government to legislate on the minimum wage is not anything else other than their perception on labor, or what their view is about labor. They think labor, as a country, we can continue to grow while exploiting labor. I think the leadership of the workers unions, the leaders, the labor centers, we should put our efforts together and change this perception. The resulting or the effects of this perception is that we allow investors to continue pay peanuts to our workers, and yet we continue to report growth at organizational level. They are saying companies are growing, the economy is growing, the GDP per capita is growth in infrastructure. Everything seems to be growing except the what we pay or the remuneration of workers. And there's a historic struggle between capital and labor that from time immemorial, employers or capital owners, investors would want as much as they could to pay little, to pay less to their workers, which you call exploitation. But I think we should, it should stop. It's a high time it stopped, because this is not going to be the case forever. It is not the 18th century America that developed because of it had slaves or exploited labor, or France. All these Western countries developed so fast because, and that's why they gave birth, historically speaking, to the labor unions. That labor had to organize to fight against these inequalities. So now in our country, our economists and government have not paid attention to the fact that while we appreciate that investors are bringing their capital here, we are attracting capital, and so is there's a lot that the country loses in when it does not remunerate its labor appropriately. If you are Stanbic Bank and you are paying this little, it follows that uh, if I pay little my workers, so will be my tax. Because if you are paying tax on basis of what I pay you, then we if you cheat labor, you are not only cheating labor, you are also cheating the economy in a general sense. So we should push for, we should have a discussion on how we can change this perception by government. The other indicator is that we still have
Brother
uh,
Isaac, Brother Isaac Olwa, could you mute kindly?
someone should mute.
Brother Isaac Olwa, could you mute?
Sorry about this. Someone should mute their microphone. So Honorable Abdul and colleagues, I think what we should push for is reforms in the law that gives more protection to our workers. In our recent events, in the recent events in the country, like mergers and rationalization, it occurred to me that there are huge gaps in the protection of labor. Imagine government waking up one day and the discussions at the level of cabinet and parliament, they choose to end or to bring entities to closure, to dissolve without due care or regard of the workers therein. And you, as a result, you have millions or rather hundreds of workers. Now, many of them, about 2,000 former workers of UNRWA, have taken the government to court. And you think that's justice enough? It is not, because we have seen before workers of former agencies like the printers. I meet them on the streets. They are struggling to get their compensation. 32 years later, they have not been paid. You have workers that were retrenched from these other agencies like Uganda Railway and so many more that have been paid or fairly compensated. So unless we stand our ground to cause changes, to cause reforms, and close the loopholes in the law, in the gaps in the law, to make sure that we strengthen our job protection mechanisms, labor is going to continue being cheated. And if you allow me, Honorable, that having this opportunity, if their leaders, their voters, their delegates on this space, this forms part of my campaign, my agenda, that we need to cause reforms that will strengthen protection of labor against any form of injustice, any form of this termination or closures of entities that does not take care of how you exit. Allowing a decent exit to our workers is going to be terrible. It is even worse in the private sector. The other one is we have talked about a equitable sharing of the wealth that we labor contributes to create. If you are saying there is a general growth in the economy as a government, you have indicated figures of growth in the economy, the infrastructure is growing, and all that. but we did not see that in the remuneration of labor. Now, apart from the recent enhancement of scientists and then UPDF and others, largely the labor in the country is still, the best, the least beneficiary of that growth they are talking about. And without changing the perception, government will continue to invest in the infrastructure. They are investing in the roads. They are putting up good seed schools. They are doing good infrastructure in terms of health centers. But the human capital, the human labor that is manning that infrastructure is not well remunerated. And that's why you see there's a crisis. Government is investing in the hardware, but the software, the human capital is not well remunerated. The result is that you have corruption in the workplaces. You will go to a very beautiful building as a health center or a referral hospital, but you will not find drugs. You will not get the best service because you have not paid that labor. So I will stop here, colleagues, but I think our focus is how we can stand our ground and defend this labor. World Bank and ILO, International Labour Organization, have reported that annually there's a transfer of wealth from labor to capital to the tune of $3 trillion globally. And we can bring that home and we see how much of this growth, entity by entity, goes to reward labor than the capital owners, the investors. If you look at these telecom companies, yes, they are paying taxes, but how much do they repatriate to their countries? If you look at these banks, how much do they repatriate? Who interrogates how much do they pay exactly in real sense? How much do they pay to their workers? You can talk of many workers employed by the organization, but in actual sense, how much are you paying them? What is the average wage or salary of a banker? What is
Thank you,
I'll
Honorable.
stop there.
Thank you, Honorable Mohandik. I think I can.
I get this passionate, so let me stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. But I think we shall need here again, like Dr. Ling mentioned, we need really more time where we can have insightful discussion. And I think we need to make resolutions even at our union levels. I thank you so much. I think that has been quite so insightful. Can we have Honorable Mudiva Hassan?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, and I appreciate the panelists, Dr. Ring and my sister, and my brother Andrew, Honorable. But if the time is still as it is planned, I'm seeing we are remaining with 2 minutes. I would give my time to the panelists to make their concluding remarks.
No,
maybe next time
we are adding about 15 minutes.
Okay.
We have been requested. We add some 15 minutes. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. And I want to thank the panelists, Dr. Oling and Sister Agatha and my brother Andrew Mwandichi. I appreciate and I agree with your statements, the introductory framework of decent work and the scope, and several areas of interrogation you have made. I agree with it. However, because of time, for me, I'm going to concentrate on dispute settlement, stroke strike mechanism, particularly in the public service. The other day, I was interacting with our brother Robert Matuku, and he made a point in respect of the Public Service Act, Dispute Settlement Machinery Act Cap 93, where he said that, and I agree with him, that that act was made in a way to control unions, but not to promote decent work agenda. And the same apply to most of these labor laws. And I argue that whenever reform comes, we should try to make sure that these laws are made in a way that promotes a decent work agenda than focusing on controlling the growth of unions. I can give you an example, like a dispute settlement and a strike in the public service. The law talk of essential services, and even the same laws talk of issuing a certificate to the parties before industrial action is undertaken. But when you ask what constitutes an essential service, is there an agreeable definition of essential services? Number two, how are disputes that arise from the essential services sector? Because if you read Schedule 3 of the Dispute Settlement Machinery Act, it shows the essential services which are similar to those cited in the public service, where they talk of fire, water, electricity, even they include local government police. But if you ask what constitutes, what makes one sector to be essential service and the other one not to be essential service? Number two, what mechanism is there to resolve disputes that arise within the essential services? Or this formulation is made to deny some sectors to exercise their rights on account of calling them essential services. Then number two, the same laws, as we are talking of promoting decent work and so on, is silent on when the state acts as a sovereign state and when the state acts as an employer. Sometimes and many times they are messed up. You find a worker is asking for his due right from government, who is the employer, but instead of responding appropriately, the government will wear a coat of sovereign state, thereby frustrating that effort of promoting decent work agenda. Then two, when they talk of CBA must be registered, also there is a mix. Like for our case, union is in government. The law, like the law, the Public Service Negotiating Consultative and Dispute Settlement Act, it says government, the union is represented by the union, the general secretary, and the head of public service and the secretary to cabinet represents the government side. But when it comes to registration of a collective bargaining, even when you have negotiated and agreed, still government will turn around and say, no, the permanent secretary of finance didn't sign, the commissioner didn't sign. This one, as if every government official must append to a collective bargaining in order to qualify to be registered as a collective bargaining agreement that must be enforced under the law. So some of those gaps, I feel that if are not addressed in time, those who intend to benefit out of decent worker agenda may be denied that right. Then lastly, is the issue of bilateral immigrant workers, our workers who go outside the country. How do they benefit from this framework? I think we need it high time to capture, because that sector is growing at a high speed, and the people involved are not benefiting. Yet, they are what we call bilateral investment treaties, where Uganda and other countries sign to protect foreign workers who go to work in those countries. But the challenge with these treaties is that they only protect skilled labor. Yet, now the people who are unskilled are more than the skilled labor, and yet the government has that sovereign responsibility to protect their citizens wherever they are. So I don't know what Dr. Oling can guide us on how to, and another member on a discussion. How do we make sure that these Ugandans, because they are, much as they are not skilled, but they are human beings, they are Ugandans, and they are entitled to protection from the state.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you
Chair.
very much, Honorable Hassan Madiba, brother, for that insightful discussion. Comrade Rafik, all the way from Kenya, you are most welcome. And I think the issue at hand is decent work agenda and social justice. What is your experience in Kenya? Briefly, if you can come in. Comrade Rafik from Kenya.
Good evening, gentlemen. Good
Good
evening,
evening.
ladies. Yes, thank you very much for accommodating me from Kenya. I am very pleased to be here and listening very keenly on the developing agendas. I would say very keenly that now that we have regional and also talking about the African Union policies and way forward, I would say that most of our countries have not yet realized the full potential in terms of service delivery, government and also private sector enhancing the economy so that people can actually feel that they are fulfilled when they work for these institutions or government. The main agenda here is that conflicts of interest are based on experience whereby it is very expensive to train and get experience over a long period, and efficiencies and effectiveness is brought about by the long-term experiences that we have in these institutions. I normally refer to what we call institutional memory. And if that is not upheld, there are many disruptions that causes inefficiency in service delivery. So I believe that I have not yet caught up with the whole subject matter clearly, but I'm putting up an idea that it is about time that our economies are related to service delivery, and service delivery means you capitulate on in the investment of staff or people who are in government and in the other institutions so that we can compete. I recently heard our president from Kenya say that Kenya wants to be a first world country. Basically, first world countries are pegged on the human, what we call the human satisfaction or the human happiness index. And that also contributes towards people working for an institution with their whole intent to deliver services that are necessary for developing the countries. Over to you, Senior Abdulhu.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
We
much.
are proud and privileged to have you on this platform. I think next time you should keep there and join us. Thank you so much. And I think members within the region, we need really to harmonize and benchmark on good practices. Thank you so much, Comrade Rafik, for your insightful input. Members, we can have some 3 more members, 2 minutes. Yes.
Yeah. Doctor.
Starting with Aneno. Sister Aneno.
Yes, thank you very much, Honorable Byakatonda,
Yes, you're
the
welcome.
panelists, the three panelists. Thank you for your presentation regarding the issues of decent work. I will speak so much in the context of Uganda, and more especially in the private sector, where I'm so much acquainted with. Indeed, when we are speaking of the decent work currently in the context of Uganda, we have several laws that are in place, as the panelists have mentioned, including the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, which give us, the workers, the rights to form and join the trade union of our choice. However, when it comes to our rights as workers in Uganda, we meet a lot of challenges, and looks like the previous speaker said, the implementation of the law is lacking. When we go to Ministry of Labor, you'll find that we have only the Department of Labor with a handful of people. But I think it is very important that we push for an independent Ministry of Labor in future, so that they handle the matter with the technocrats who can handle, look into the issues of unemployment and issues of decent work in the country. Because I want to give you one example today. I was addressing a worker somewhere in one of the factory. But here comes, appointment letter is a requirement in the law. But you'll find workers are working without appointment letters in this country for 10 years. They have nothing. And when time comes to run to industrial court, like Dr. Oling has said, there's no evidence that shows that this worker has worked in a certain company. Worse, if you move around and you do your own research, in majority of these factories, workers do not have appointment letters. Because we as trade union, the truth is that we are supposed to advance the workers' rights and ensuring that we build the workers' power by organizing them to join the trade union. Are we doing this? Confronting some of the global capitals that are not allowing us to organize, and in ensuring that we also participate in promoting the sustainable industrial policy. Can you unmute? There's a challenge there. In ensuring that we promote the sustainable industrial policy. Because sometimes most of these policies that come, we are not participating. And for example, the government right now is trying to create jobs by ensuring that they put numbers of industrial parks to employ the numbers of employees in different parts of the country. Are we participating in this industrial policy in ensuring that we have good policies which are sustainable? When I speak of the freedom of association of the workers, this is where it hurt me so much, because the Constitution is very clear, but why is it that it does not work when it comes to freedom of association of workers? And workers remain working under a very difficult conditions, and the employment is precarious in Uganda. Majority of these workplaces are employing workers under precarious work, non-standard employment, without appointment letters, without, you'll find that these workers cannot even change their lives, because if I work, I must work to change my life, the work must be decent enough, decent wages, decent life. But today, when we work, it is a hand to mouth. There are some workplaces where workers are paid 5,000. How can I change my life and take my children to school in such a condition with such wages? Because it is there and it is happening. 6,000. Therefore, if we are speaking of decent work, it must change our life in the course of our work. If we work 10 years and we go barehanded and no one can pay you even a gratuity in that workplaces, because where union exists, like we are negotiating collective bargaining agreement, yes, we can negotiate collective bargaining agreement, we can improve the working condition, but we can only do this if workers are allowed to form and join the trade union. But where we are not allowed to form and join the trade union, then the future of the workers will remain dark, and all our workers will remain on precarious work, hidden under the casualization of heavy casualization of employment. And these workers, their future will remain dark because they cannot contribute to the social security. Therefore, precarious work must be opposed. We must oppose the growth of precarious work because the country is being robbed, highly robbed with cheap labor, and yet the government is struggling to create more jobs for its citizens. So I want to stop here. Honorable Byakatonda, we have 5 representatives in parliament, but the voices of workers in this country has remained silent and the workers are suffering. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, my mentor, for those very pertinent issues you have raised. And I think this will form a basis of our consultative processes and inform our decisions. Ladies and gentlemen, I think I have run out of time. Let me call on the panelists, starting with Sister Agatha, to make your concluding remarks, then Dr. Oling. Sister Agatha, please.
Thank you so much. Actually, I agree with the doctor from the industrial court that we really need more time to really discuss these issues. I want to thank everyone who has participated, but we have seen that there are key aspects in order for the Ugandans, especially Ugandans, to achieve decent work. We still have a lot to do, especially in issues of income. How do we balance our income vis-a-vis investors who are coming in? So we need our to come up with really a meaningful minimum wage, which could be sector by sector. I think that will solve some of our issues on that pillar. Social protection, yes, I know the act has been amended, but it still needs to cover everyone, not only the former people, but it needs to cover everyone. I think so many people have talked about social dialogue. It's very important. And Sister Nino, I know you have done a lot of work towards this, a lot of efforts. We have the enabling laws. Enforcement is another point, because it's a right for people to join trade union. And it's only through trade unions that we can achieve that pillar of social dialogue and be able to talk and make decisions that are binding at all levels. So we really need to focus very much on that. You've also talked of the issue of casualization. Casualization is where people hide, where the employers hide under. And we find that people working in conditions that are really appalling, that they have no right. If you're a casual worker, you have no right at all. At all, I have seen it. You have no right to social protection, have no right to talking, have no right to protectives. You're just there. So we have to critically fight casualization at all levels. and people hide it under outsourcing and out so many devices. So we need to also put our voices there. We are in an election period. We have just a few months to elections. Let us be able to elect people who will go out there in the parliament and advocate for workers keenly in seeing that these issues are really voiced out and policies are made. So in that line, I want to thank really Honorable Byakatonda. We cannot leave you out because you have really done something to make sure that people are highlighted on these issues. We can discuss them and see the way forward. So for me, that is my take for today. Dr. Byakatonda should be on your ballot box papers. Give him a tick. Thank you.
And
Thank
Honorable
you very much.
Mohandik.
Thank you very much. I think let's before Honorable Muhandi comes, let's have Dr. Ling.
Thank you so much. Because of lack of time, first of all, I thank you, Honorable Abdulhu, and I want to beg you to make a webinar that is going to touch on externalized workers, as well as bring into light the issue of ILO and international convention, because we are having a lot of questions, including today, one of the persons who have spoken, I think from Uganda Local Government Union, asked a question whether the ILO regulations apply or protects externalized workers, and the answer is yes. So the problem is not with the ILO convention that the United Nations member states have signed. The problem is with the adaptation. Unless we adopt ILO standards in practice, we are not going to even utilize the conventions in our courts of law, because in the industrial court, when a case comes and I sit with the judge, the four of us, the tripartite settings, 3 panelists, 1 judge, and when you ask, oh, you as the judge, why can't we do A, B, C, D? The judge will tell you that it is not within our judicature. It is not within our jurisdiction. And yet, Uganda is one of the countries that have adopted ILO norms. So why is a judge in the industrial court not quoting the ILO in order to make a unique precedent and decision in a specific case? Why are we tying ourselves into the interpretation of LADASA alone while we are part of the international community and we are not actually adopting ILO standards in practice? So adopting ILO standards in practice can protect non-contractual and casual workers by extending core labor rights, promoting collective bargaining rights, and integrating informal employment into our national legal frameworks. If we cannot have our judges in industrial court to judge using the conventions that we have signed, then we have to come back to honorable members like Dr. Abdulhu and the rest of the workers, members of parliament. We sit down and adopt ILO and international standards into our law so that our judges can actually rule using these norms. That is my ending, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ling. Honorable Muhandiki, we have 2 minutes to use one. I use one to close.
Thank you, Honorable, for another round of opportunity. I just want to emphasize the question of I think what unions in the country, 50, how many of them, the biggest challenge they are grappling with is organizing and recruitment. You ask Modiba, my colleague from local government union, he goes to a district and workers are almost whispering, has COW approved the organization workplaces here? where you go and you want to recruit and they are saying management must approve, the board has to, what does that have to do with a personal individual right? The Constitution has just said you have a right or freedom to associate. Why do we need approvals from our bosses? So I think, Honorable, thank you for this evening. But this discussion, this educative sessions should be taken out. One, to inform the workers in a general sense, their sources of empowerment, that these are rights given to them by not only our national law, the Constitution, but also the international frameworks, like ILO and the UN Charter on Human Rights. But I thank you on that. I also want to add the voice or a call raised by my sister Agatha, that if you are voting, look for, let it not be the issue of who pays more money. Let it be who has passion about these issues and who has the promise to bring them forth on the plenary of parliament, the committees, and outside. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, colleagues. And I think, members, I think you realize the fact that we need to come sharing here ideas. And Comrade Muhandik, I think, thank you for joining. Most people think it is a waste of time, or it is maybe galvanizing support. But I think it is important that we discuss and come up with ideas that can inform decisions in our operations. Thank you very much. The next topic for next Saturday, we shall be looking at occupational safety and health, OS, as a vehicle for enhanced compliance in the world of work. So volunteers for panelists are welcome. We shall appreciate if you come on board. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you for participating. Have a good night until we meet. Kudos.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night too.
Thank you.
Thank you, presenters and facilitators.
Good night.